Welcome back, everyone, to the Unseen Wisdom. You know, we like to take complex issues from the news and try to extract some valuable insights.
Yeah, makes sense of the chaos.
Exactly. And today we're going to be diving headfirst into the conflict in the Democratic Republic of Congo, specifically the M23 rebels' recent capture of Goma.
And this is one of those stories that, if you just glance at the headlines, you're not really getting the full picture.
Yeah, I mean, it's easy to get lost in the acronyms, the factions, all the different players involved.
Exactly. And I think what's really striking about this situation, and you'll see this in the news coverage you've provided, is how this conflict, it really spirals out from a seemingly simple question.
Okay.
Who belongs where?
Aha.
The legacy of colonialism and the way borders were drawn across existing tribal lands, it created this powder keg of tensions.
You know, it's almost like trying to build a house on a foundation of shifting sand.
Right.
How can a nation really find stability when its very identity is constantly being contested?
Yeah, it's a challenge. And then you layer on top of that, the DRC's mineral wealth, which has become a curse as much as a blessing.
It's fascinating to me how often resources become the center of conflict.
Oh, absolutely. It's tragic, really. The DRC possesses incredible mineral wealth, but it's become this magnet for exploitation, fueling the conflict, hindering the DRC's ability to really forge its own path.
So we've got these historical tensions, we've got the resource curse.
Yeah, and it really underscores a point that a lot of experts in the field are raising, the challenge for many African nations to truly implement African solutions for African problems.
I see.
Reliance on former colonizers for support even today creates this dynamic where outside interests can continue to influence internal affairs.
It's a cycle that's hard to break free from. And this time it's the M23 rebels who have seized Goma, a city of strategic importance. I can only imagine the pressure President Tshisekedi is facing right now.
Oh, absolutely. The news reports paint a picture of a leader caught between a rock and a hard place. Refusing to engage with the M23 rebels, viewing them as puppets of Rwanda, it's a principled stance, but it makes a diplomatic solution extremely difficult.
Especially given their territorial games.
Exactly. Imagine trying to negotiate with someone who's already taken most of what they want.
It seems like a recipe for stalemate.
It really does.
And the news is drawing some concerning parallels with the UN Security Council struggles in other global conflicts like Ukraine and the Middle East.
Right.
If they can't effectively intervene, who can?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And this is where regional actors become crucial.
Okay.
The Southern African Development Community, or SADC, is stepping into a very delicate role. But their involvement is not without its own challenges. South Africa, a key player in SADC, is facing intense domestic scrutiny right now.
Yeah. The news reports about the South African troops surrounded by M23 rebels in Goma are deeply concerning.
Absolutely. And the human cost of this conflict is hitting home. 13 soldiers have lost their lives already.
It's a stark reminder that these aren't just abstract geopolitical maneuvers.
No.
These are real people with families and lives that have been shattered.
Absolutely. And the news is expecting Minister of Defense Thandi Modis to brief the cabinet on the situation, including the delicate process of engaging the families of the fallen soldiers.
Right.
There's an urgent need for a ceasefire to allow for the repatriation of their bodies and for any further action to be taken. This is a defining moment for South Africa and for SADC. President Ramaphosa is expected to address the nation following the upcoming SADC meeting, and many eyes will be on him both domestically and internationally.
What I find myself wondering is, what's the international community's endgame here? Why is the capture of Goma such a pivotal moment in their eyes?
It's certainly about strategy,
Okay.
but the news repeatedly highlights a much deeper concern, the humanitarian crisis that has been plaguing the DRC for decades.
Yeah, it's easy to forget that amidst all the political maneuvering, there are real people suffering.
Right. Goma's capture is a flashpoint, but the underlying issue is the immense suffering of the Congolese people, particularly women and children, who bear the brunt of the violence.
The reports are filled with stories of displacement, exploitation, and unimaginable hardship.
Absolutely.
It's a stark reminder that behind the political maneuvering and military strategies, there are real human lives being shattered.
And that's where the true unseen wisdom lies.
Okay.
It's not just about understanding the complexities of the conflict, but about acknowledging the human cost and recognizing the urgent need for peace and stability. African leaders have a responsibility to prioritize the well-being of their citizens and break free from these endless cycles of conflict.
So we got this Gordian knot of historical baggage resource conflicts and a heartbreaking humanitarian crisis.
Right.
Where do we even begin to untangle this? Is military intervention the answer, or are we talking about some kind of negotiated settlement?
Military intervention always carries the risk of unintended consequences. It's a blunt instrument that rarely achieves lasting peace. Many experts, myself included, believe that the only path to a sustainable solution is through negotiation. But getting all parties to the table willing to engage in good faith, that's the real challenge.
Especially when there's so much mistrust, so much pain, so much at stake.
Precisely. A negotiated settlement requires all parties to be genuinely committed to peace, to be willing to compromise, to see beyond their own immediate interests. It's a long and arduous process, but the alternative is unthinkable.
And on that note, we'll have to leave it there for now, but this conversation is far from over. Stay with us as we continue to explore the intricacies of the DRC conflict and delve deeper into the possibilities for a peaceful resolution.
Before we delve further, I think it's crucial to remember that any negotiated settlement in the DRC, it's going to be incredibly complex.
Yeah, it's not just about getting everyone in a room and hoping for the best, right?
Right. It's more like trying to solve a multidimensional puzzle.
Okay.
With each piece representing a different faction, a different agenda, years of deep-seated mistrust.
Yeah, you start to see those layers of complexity pretty quickly when you look at the news coverage.
Absolutely. You've got the Congolese government struggling to maintain control and legitimacy.
Right.
Then you have the M23 rebels, emboldened by their recent victories, fueled by their own set of demands and ideology, which we can see reflected in their statements to the press. And then, of course, we can't forget the influence of neighboring countries, some accused of backing the rebels, creating this web of regional power struggles.
It's a dizzying mix of internal and external pressures. And amidst all of this, the UN Security Council, the supposed guarantor of global peace, seems to be struggling to find its footing.
Yeah, the news has been drawing comparisons to their struggles in Ukraine and the Middle East. If the UN can't effectively intervene, does that leave the DRC to fend for itself?
That's the question, isn't it?
It is, and it's a valid concern, but not necessarily. While the era of imposing external solutions is over, the international community still has a vital role to play. But it requires a more nuanced approach. Think of it less as dictating the terms of peace and more about empowering the Congolese people to forge their own path.
I'm really curious to unpack this further. What does that kind of empowerment actually look like? How can the international community support the peace process without dictating the outcome?
Well, first and foremost, it starts with truly listening to the concerns of all parties involved, not just the loudest voices or those with the most weapons. It means providing a platform for dialogue, creating safe spaces where all sides can come together and begin to rebuild trust. And it requires acknowledging the voices of those who've been marginalized and silence those most affected by the conflict but often left out of the peace process.
It sounds like a monumental task, rebuilding trust after years of conflict.
You're right, it is. It's a long and arduous process that demands patience, empathy, and a willingness to compromise from all sides.
And honesty. From the stories I've read in the news, it feels almost impossible.
It can feel that way, but the alternative, continued conflict and suffering, is simply unacceptable.
I agree. And amidst all of this, we can't forget the immediate needs of the people caught in the crossfire. The humanitarian crisis unfolding in the DRC demands urgent attention.
Absolutely. Humanitarian aid is not an option, it's an imperative.
Right.
We need to ensure that food, water, shelter, and medical care reach those who need it most, regardless of their political affiliations or which side of the conflict they find themselves on.
Yeah, the news has been highlighting the particularly vulnerable position of women and children in this conflict. They often bear the brunt of the violence, displacement, and exploitation.
It's a heartbreaking reality, and their safety and well-being must be paramount in any peace process. We need to prioritize their protection, ensure they have access to essential resources, and create opportunities for them to rebuild their lives and communities.
It's a powerful reminder that true peace isn't just about silencing the guns.
No.
It's about creating conditions where everyone, especially the most vulnerable, can live with dignity and security.
Precisely. It's about addressing the root causes of conflict, whether they be political, economic, or social. It's about breaking the cycles of poverty and despair that make communities vulnerable to recruitment by armed groups. And it's about investing in education, healthcare, sustainable development, the building blocks of a just and lasting peace.
Those are powerful words. It feels like we're shifting the conversation from managing conflict to proactively building a better future.
Yeah.
And that brings us to a question I've been grappling with.
Okay.
What about the average person, someone like me or anyone listening? What could we do to make a difference? Sometimes this all feels so overwhelming, like our individual actions are just a drop in the ocean.
That's a question I get a lot, and it's an important one. You know, it's easy to feel powerless in the face of such a complex and intractable conflict. But those drops, multiplied by millions, can create a powerful wave of change.
So where do we start?
Yeah.
What are some concrete steps we can take to turn our concern into action?
First and foremost, educate yourself. Read the news, research the issues, understand the historical context and the human stories behind the headlines. You know, there are incredible organizations doing phenomenal work on the ground in the DRC, but they often struggle to get the attention and support they deserve. Sharing information, amplifying their voices, and raising awareness among your own networks can make a real difference.
So you're saying even just talking about this, spreading the word can actually help?
Absolutely. Raising awareness puts pressure on policymakers, businesses, and the international community to act.
Yep.
It shines a light on the situation, creates a sense of urgency, and fosters accountability.
And for those who want to go beyond awareness, what else can they do? What kind of concrete actions can individuals take to support the DRC's journey toward peace?
Well, there are many ways to get involved. You can donate to reputable organizations providing humanitarian aid and working on peace-building initiatives in the DRC. You can volunteer your time or skills to support these organizations. You can contact your elected representatives and urge them to prioritize peace and diplomacy in the region.
From what I've seen in the news, even making conscious consumer choices can have an impact. Supporting businesses committed to ethical sourcing of minerals from the DRC, ensuring our own purchases aren't inadvertently fueling the conflict, that feels like a tangible step we can all take.
You're absolutely right. Every choice we make, every dollar we spend has the potential to either contribute to the problem or be part of the solution. It's about leveraging our collective power as consumers to push for a more just and equitable world.
And that brings us back to the core of what this show is all about, uncovering the unseen wisdom, the connections, the insights that can guide us toward a better future, both for the people of the DRC and for ourselves.
It's about recognizing our shared humanity, understanding that we are all interconnected, and realizing that what happens in one corner of the world ultimately affects us all. And it's about empowering ourselves to be agents of change, to use our voices and actions to make a positive impact on the world around us.
Well said. You know, it's easy to get caught up in the enormity of the situation in the DRC and feel like anything we do is just a drop in the bucket.
I hear you.
But you've given us some really concrete ways to make a difference.
Right.
And it all starts with education and awareness.
It really does. The more people who understand what's actually going on there, the more pressure we can put on those in power to do something.
It's not just about reading news articles, is it?
No, it's about going deeper.
Okay.
Understanding the history, hearing the voices of the Congolese people themselves, and then, of course, taking action.
Right, so donating to reputable organizations, supporting ethical businesses, things like that.
Exactly. Each of those choices sends a message.
It does.
It's about putting your money where your mouth is, so to speak.
So we're not powerless.
No.
We can actually make a difference.
We can, and that's really what this show is all about, isn't it?
It's uncovering that unseen wisdom.
Yeah, those connections, the insights that can help us create a better world.
Well, as we wrap up this deep dive into the DRC conflict, I'm left with this feeling of, well, urgency, but also hope.
Right.
Urgency because the situation is so dire.
Absolutely.
But hope, because I really believe that through collective action, we can help build a brighter future for the Congolese people.
I agree. Change doesn't happen overnight, but every step we take brings us closer to that goal.
So thank you for joining us on this journey and for engaging in this crucial conversation.
Yes, thank you.
And to our listeners, don't let this conversation end here. Keep learning, keep questioning, and most importantly, keep pushing for change.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
And as always, don't forget to like this video, share it with your friends, and subscribe to The Unseen Wisdom for more deep dives into the news.
Until next time, keep seeking the unseen wisdom.